A simple act of kindness from a waitress changed the life of a homeless boy, forever. Little did she know. A billionaire was watching, ready to change both their destinies. Emma had always known what it felt like to struggle. She wasn't born into comfort, and life never gave her anything for free. Her days were long and tiring, and her nights were filled with worries, but she never let that change her heart. Had learned from her mother that kindness wasn't about how much you had, it was about how much you gave, even when you had little. She worked at a small, old diner called Rosie's Place. Tucked into the corner of a busy street in the city, it wasn't a famous diner, but it was known to locals for its warm food and warmer people. The walls were lined with pictures of smiling customers from long ago. The tables were scratched but clean, and the smell of coffee and fried eggs filled the air every morning. Emma had been working there for 2 years, ever since her father passed away and her mother got too sick to work. Her day usually started before sunrise. She would take the first bus into the city, open the diner with a tired smile, and spend the next 12 hours pouring coffee, taking orders, and listening to strangers talk about their lives. She had grown used to it. Her shoes always hurt her feet, and her back ached by the end of her shift, but she kept going. She had to. Her mother depended on her, and Emma didn't want to fail her. One chilly November evening, just as she was refilling the sugar containers near the front window, she noticed someone outside. It was a boy, maybe 10 or 11 years old, wearing a dirty hoodie that was far too big for him and shoes that looked like they had walked hundreds of miles. He had his hands in his pockets and was staring at the display of pies through the window, his nose pressed against the glass. Emma paused for a second, watching him. Something in her chest tugged gently. Ow. The boy didn't look like he was waiting for someone. Didn't look like he had anywhere to go. He looked lost, cold, hungry. Without thinking too much, Emma stepped out of the diner and walked toward him. "Hey there," she said gently, smiling a little. The boy flinched slightly and looked away. "Are you okay?" He didn't answer. He just nodded a little, but his eyes never met hers. She noticed the dirt on his face and the redness around his fingers from the cold. "Are you hungry?" Asked softly. He hesitated, then nodded again. Just once, Emma held the door open. "Come inside. I'll get you something warm, okay?" The boy followed her without a word, his steps quiet and cautious. Inside, the diner was almost empty. It was close to closing time, and only a few regulars were sipping coffee in the corner booths. Emma led the boy to a small table near the kitchen and told him to sit. "What would you like?" she asked. He looked nervous. I don't have money," he whispered. Emma shook her head kindly. "Don't worry about it. This one's on me." The boy looked at her as if he couldn't believe what he had just heard. His eyes widened for a moment before he looked down at his hands again. Emma didn't ask any more questions. She went into the kitchen and prepared a plate of scrambled eggs, toast, and hot soup. She added a slice of pie and poured a cup of hot chocolate, extra marshmallows on top. When she placed the tray in front of him, he whispered a quiet "Thank you. Welcome." The boy ate slowly, like he wasn't used to warm meals. He didn't speak much, just gave her shy glances now and then. Emma went back to work, refilling coffee and wiping tables, but she kept an eye on him from a distance. Something about the way he sat, quiet, unsure, made her heart ache. After he finished eating, he stood up and mumbled, "I should go." Emma walked over and gently touched his shoulder. "You don't have to rush. You can stay a little longer to warm up." He looked at her for a second, then nodded and sat back down. Emma poured him another cup of hot chocolate and sat across from him. "What's your name?" she asked. He stayed silent for a moment. "Don't remember," he said quietly. Emma didn't press. "That's okay. No. You can tell me when you're ready." After that night, the boy started showing up every few days. Sighed, until Emma waved him in. Other times, he walked straight to the same booth and waited quietly. Emma never asked him questions he didn't want to answer. She just made sure he had a warm meal, a smile, and a safe place to sit for a while. Other waiters sometimes whispered about him. "You really shouldn't feed him for free," one said. "The boss won't like it." But Emma didn't care. She paid for the meals out of her own tips. Some days she skipped lunch herself so the boy could eat. "He's just a kid," she said once. No one should go hungry like that. She started leaving small things for him, 2 clean socks and old jacket she found at a thrift shop, gloves when the weather turned colder. He never asked for anything, and she never made a big deal out of it. It was just something she did, quietly with care. The boy still didn't talk much. He would give her small smiles now and then, and once he even laughed when she told a silly joke about a customer who asked for ice cream on spaghetti. It was the first time she saw his face light up. His teeth were crooked, and his cheeks were thin. But his eyes were kind. Emma started to wonder where he went at night. Did he sleep in a shelter? Under a bridge? She thought about asking. But something held her back. Maybe he wasn't ready to tell her. Maybe he never would be. She decided it didn't matter. As long as he kept coming, she would keep feeding him. That was enough. What Emma didn't know was that someone had noticed. A man had been sitting in the corner booth of the diner during one of those evenings. He had a newspaper in front of him, but he wasn't reading it. He was watching. He saw the way Emma treated the boy, not with pity, but with quiet dignity. She never acted like she was doing something special. She never expected a thank you or attention. She just did it because she cared. The man came back the next night, and the night after that, he never spoke to Emma. He ordered coffee, sometimes a sandwich, and sat in the same spot. To most people, he looked like just another quiet customer, but he was paying close attention. Emma didn't notice him at first. She was too busy taking care of customers and keeping the boy safe. She thought her life was ordinary. Wake up, work, take care of mom, repeat. She didn't know that her simple kindness was making a deep impression on someone with the power to change everything. The weather grew colder, and Emma began to worry about the boy more. She left a note in the pocket of the jacket she gave him. If you ever need help, come find me. He never mentioned the note, but he kept the jacket close. One night, the boy didn't come. Emma kept glancing at the window, hoping to see his small figure outside, but he never showed. The next night, he didn't come either. Her heart started to feel heavy. Was he okay? Had something happened? She tried to go on with her shift, but her mind kept drifting back to him. The man in the corner booth watched her more carefully that night. He saw the worry in her eyes, the way she stared at the door. He watched as she packed a sandwich and left it in the corner booth just in case the boy came in later. She waited until closing, but the seat stayed empty. Emma didn't know it. But this was just the beginning of something much bigger than she could imagine. After 2 full nights without seeing the boy, Emma couldn't stop worrying. He had become a small but important part of her everyday life. Even though he didn't talk much, and even though she didn't know anything about where he came from, she had grown attached to him in a quiet, protective way. Every time she saw him walking in through the diner door, something in her heart felt lighter. With him gone, that same heart felt heavy like a stone. She checked around the neighborhood. After her shift, she walked past the bus stops, behind the nearby stores, and even near the old park where some homeless people sometimes stayed. She asked a few regulars who worked in nearby shops if they had seen a small boy in a gray hoodie. Most of them shook their heads. One man said he might have seen someone like that near the alley behind the gas station, but he wasn't sure. Emma thanked him and kept searching until the cold air made her fingers go numb. Back at home, her mother noticed her quiet mood. "You look tired, sweetheart," her mom said softly from her worn-out armchair. "I'm okay," Emma lied. "Just a long day." But she wasn't okay. She couldn't stop thinking about where the boy might be sleeping that night. The streets were cold, and winter had arrived early that year. She couldn't imagine how a young kid could survive alone. In that kind of weather, 3 more days passed, and still, there was no sign of him. Each day, Emma saved a meal for him and kept it warm in case he walked through the door. Each night, she left the diner with a little less hope, and yet something deep inside her refused to give up. She believed he would come back. Finally, one evening just before closing, the bell above the diner door rang, and Emma turned around quickly. Her heart skipped a beat. It was him. He stood there quietly, soaking wet from the rain, his hoodie darker from water and his shoes muddy. His face looked even thinner than before, and his eyes held a kind of tiredness that didn't belong in a child. Emma rushed to him. "Where have you been?" she asked softly, trying to hide the mix of worry and relief in her voice. "I got sick," the boy mumbled, wiping his nose on his sleeve. "I stayed in a building near the river until I could walk again." Emma guided him gently to the back booth, the one where he always sat. She brought him dry towels from the kitchen and a warm blanket from her locker. Then she went back to the kitchen and fixed him a full plate grilled cheese, tomato soup, a slice of pie, and hot chocolate with marshmallows. It was more food than he could eat, but she didn't care. As he ate, Emma sat across from him again. "Do you want to tell me your name now?" she asked kindly. The boy hesitated, chewing slowly. Then he gave a small nod. "Jacob. Jacob," Emma repeated with a soft smile. "That's a good name." He looked down at his food. "Thanks for the food and the blanket." "I didn't think I'd ever be warm again." Emma's heart ached. She wanted to hug him, to protect him, to take him home, but she knew she couldn't do any of that. Not yet. She didn't know if he'd let her. So she simply said, "You're always welcome here, Jacob. As long as I'm working here, you'll never go hungry." Jacob looked up at her, his eyes wide. "Why are you nice to me?" Emma blinked, surprised. "Because you matter. Because if I were in your place, I'd hope someone would be nice to me too." He gave a small smile, the kind that disappeared quickly, but left a mark behind. Emma didn't ask more questions. She let him finish his meal in peace. What Emma didn't notice was that once again the same man was sitting in the corner booth. He had been there during Jacob's first visit back and was watching with interest. His coat was expensive, and his watch quietly shone under the dim lights, but he looked calm and ordinary. He blended in with the shadows, his newspaper folded in half. But his eyes were focused only on Emma and the boy. He had been coming to the diner nearly every evening since the first time he saw Emma help Jacob. It started as curiosity. He was in the area for business, and had stopped at the diner on a cold night. That's when he noticed her, how she spoke to customers, how she worked without complaining, and especially how she fed the boy without hesitation. At first he thought maybe it was a one-time thing, but then he saw her do it again and again, quietly, consistently, with no audience and no need for thanks. He had seen people pretend to be kind when someone was watching, but Emma, kind when no one was paying attention, that fascinated him. Back at his luxury hotel suite, he would think about her. A girl who worked 2 jobs, who wore worn-out shoes, who fed a homeless boy without asking for his story. He was a man used to money, power, meetings, and contracts. But in that small diner, he had seen something rare, real goodness. One night, after Jacob had left, and the diner was empty, except for one old man sipping coffee, the mysterious man stood up and walked toward the counter where Emma was cleaning. "Excuse me," he said politely. Emma turned around, surprised. "Oh, hi. Can I get you something?" He shook his head. "No, thank you. I just wanted to ask. That boy you help, does he come often?" Emma looked at him carefully. His voice was calm, and his face looked gentle, but she was cautious. "He shows up when he can," she replied. "He doesn't have anyone else." The man nodded slowly. "You always feed him?" Emma wiped her hands on a towel. "Yes, I do." "Why?" Emma gave him a strange look. "Because he's a child, he's hungry. What other reason do I need?" The man didn't say anything for a few seconds. Then he smiled faintly. "That's a good answer." Emma tilted her head. "Do you know him?" "Not yet," the man replied. "But maybe I should." Then he left, leaving Emma puzzled. She watched him walk out the door and disappear into the night. Something about him didn't sit right with her, not in a bad way, but in a way that made her curious. The next day, Jacob didn't come again. Neither did the man. Emma waited. The day after that, Jacob showed up, but he looked even worse than before. He had a bruise near his temple and was limping slightly. Emma rushed to his side and helped him sit down. "What happened?" she whispered. I got chased out of a building I was sleeping in. Some older guys said I didn't belong there," Jacob said quietly. He was barely able to hold up his head. Emma brought food, warm water, and gently cleaned the scratch on his hand. She didn't cry, but her heart felt like it might break. She wanted to call anyone. But who? The police? Child services? Would they just send him back to a worse place? Jacob had never told her why he was on the street. Maybe he had run away. Maybe his parents weren't alive. Maybe they were dangerous. So many questions and so few answers. That night, when Jacob was resting in the booth with his head on his arms, the man returned. This time, he didn't sit quietly. He walked up to Emma with a serious expression. "I need to talk to you," he said. Emma looked at Jacob. He was half asleep, breathing slowly. She nodded. "Let's step outside. The cold air." The man finally told her something she didn't expect. "My name is Nathan Cole," he said. "I run a foundation for children. I also happen to be a billionaire. But I don't want to talk about money. I want to talk about him." Emma stared at him in shock. "You're what?" "Been watching you," he continued. "Not in a bad way. I needed to see something real. And you're real. You care." Emma didn't know what to say. "I think I know who that boy is," Nathan said. "And if I'm right, he's my nephew." The ground beneath Emma felt like it shifted. "Your nephew?" Nathan nodded. "His name is Jacob Carter. He went missing 8 months ago after his mother, my sister, passed away. There was a custody fight with his father. Jacob ran away from a home that wasn't safe. We've been looking for him ever since. And then I saw him here. With you." Emma felt dizzy. So many thoughts rushed through her head. Was this true? Was Jacob really a missing child from a rich family? And if so, what now? "I didn't want to scare him," Nathan continued. "That's why I waited. But I think it's time I talk to him." Emma looked through the diner window at Jacob, still sleeping. "Will he be safe?" "With me?" Nathan said. "Yes, I promise." Emma nodded slowly. "Then we'll talk to him. Together." The air outside was cold, but Emma barely noticed it. She stood still, trying to understand what Nathan had just told her. For a moment, it felt like everything had stopped. She kept looking at the diner window, at Jacob sleeping with his head on the table, unaware of the storm quietly forming around him. Nathan stood beside her, calm but serious. His hands were in the pockets of his long dark coat, and his voice was steady, but there was something heavy in his eyes. "I want to help him," he said again. "But I need to do it the right way. I don't want him to run again." Emma turned, her head slowly toward Nathan. "He's been through so much. You saw him. He barely trusts anyone. If we scare him, he'll disappear again." "I know," Nathan said gently. "That's why I need you." Emma was confused. "Me?" Nathan nodded. "Trusts you. I've watched the way he looks at you. The way he listens when you speak. If there's anyone who can help him understand who I am, it's you." Emma didn't know what to say. She was still trying to process the idea that Jacob, this quiet, tired boy who had become a small part of her daily life, was actually someone's missing family, a billionaire's nephew, no less. It didn't feel real, but deep down she had always known there was something different about Jacob. His eyes held a kind of sadness that didn't come from the streets alone. It came from something deeper, something broken. She looked back at the diner again. Jacob was shifting slightly in the seat, rubbing his eyes. Emma took a deep breath. "Okay," she whispered. "Let's talk to him, but slowly, gently, no surprises." Nathan agreed. They both stepped back inside. The warm air wrapped around them, and the smell of leftover soup and pie filled the room. Jacob was now awake, blinking sleepily. When he saw Emma, he gave a small smile. But when his eyes landed on Nathan, the smile faded. He sat up straight, suddenly alert. "Hey," Emma said softly, walking over to him. "You remember this man? He's been here a few times?" Jacob nodded slowly, eyes fixed on Nathan. Emma sat beside him. "His name is Nathan. He wanted to meet you." Jacob's body tensed. He looked like he was ready to run. Nathan took a slow step forward. "Jacob," he said in a calm voice, "I'm not here to hurt you. I know you've been through a lot. I've been looking for you for a long time." Jacob's hands clenched. "Why?" Because, Nathan paused. Because I'm your uncle. For a few seconds, no one said anything. Then Jacob let out a short breath, as if someone had punched him in the stomach. You're lying, he said quickly, his voice shaking. I don't have an uncle. You do, Nathan replied. Your mom Leno was my sister. Jacob's eyes suddenly filled with tears. Don't talk about her. Emma gently touched his arm. Jacob, it's okay. Just listen. She's gone, Jacob whispered. She died, and no one cared. No one. I cared, Nathan said, stepping closer. I didn't even know she was sick until it was too late. I found out after. And when I did, I tried to find you. But you were already gone. Jacob looked away, his shoulders shaking. Emma could see his tears falling now. He was trying to hide them, but he couldn't. He looked so small, so lost. After my mom died. They sent me to live with my dad, Jacob said, barely loud enough to hear. He yelled all the time. He said it was my fault she died. I couldn't stay there, so I left. Nathan's jaw tightened. I tried to get custody. I fought for it. But by the time the court agreed, you had already disappeared. Been searching ever since. Jacob looked at him now, eyes still wet. How do I know you're telling the truth? Nathan slowly pulled out his wallet and took out a small photo. It was old and folded at the edges. He placed it gently on the table. It was a picture of a young woman holding a baby boy. Emma leaned in. The woman in the picture had warm eyes and a soft smile. She looked like Jacob. Jacob stared at the photo, frozen. His lips trembled. That's my mom. Nathan nodded. That's you? When you were just a few months old. She sent me that photo when you were born, Jacob said. Nothing. He just stared at the picture, touching the edge of it with one finger. I don't want to force anything, Nathan said. But I'd like to take you somewhere safe. Warm. You won't have to sleep outside again. No more running. No more hiding. Just peace. Emma saw Jacob's eyes move from the photo to her face. He didn't speak, but his expression asked a silent question. She smiled gently. It's your choice, Jacob, but I believe him, and I think maybe it's time. You let someone take care of you. Jacob was quiet for a long time. Finally, he nodded just once. Nathan didn't rush to hug him or do anything dramatic. He simply sat down. Like someone who had been holding his breath for months and could finally breathe again, Emma felt a strange mix of sadness and relief. She was happy for Jacob, but part of her didn't want to let him go. She had grown used to seeing him every few days, sharing quiet meals, watching him smile, even if only for a second. That night, Nathan made arrangements for Jacob to stay in a private suite in the same hotel he was living in, just until they could make something more permanent. He offered to let Emma ride with them, and Jacob asked her to come. She agreed. The hotel was unlike anything Emma had ever seen. The floors were shiny like mirrors. The walls had artwork that probably cost more than her yearly salary, and the elevators moved without a sound. Jacob was stunned silent by it all, but Emma noticed how he stuck close to her, like he was afraid it would all disappear. When they reached the room, it felt like a small apartment. There were clean clothes, warm food, and even a stuffed bear on the bed. Jacob looked at it, touched its soft fur, and for the first time, Emma saw him smile fully. That night, before she left, Jacob hugged her tightly. Thank you, he whispered. Emma hugged him back. I'll come visit, okay? He nodded. On the way down in the elevator, Nathan turned to her. I owe you everything, he said quietly. You saved his life. Emma shook her head. I just gave him food. No, Nathan said. You gave him hope. A week passed, then two. Emma returned to her usual shifts at the diner, but everything felt different. Her heart ached with missing Jacob, but she also felt proud of him. She still walked past the booth where he used to sit, sometimes placing a small flower on the table without realizing it. One evening, Nathan returned to the diner. He sat at the counter this time. And Emma brought him coffee. He's doing well, Nathan said. He talks about you every day. Emma smiled softly. I miss him, I know. That's why I'm here. She looked at him, curious. I want to offer you something, Nathan said. Come work with us. Help manage the new shelter we're opening. It's a place for kids. Like Jacob, you'll be doing what you already do, giving kindness. Only this time, you'll have the support to do it bigger. Emma blinked. Me? Run a shelter? With training, yes. You have the heart for it. That's the hardest part. For the rest, we can teach. Emma looked around the diner. She loved the place, but she had always wanted to do more. Maybe this was it. I'll think about it, she said. Nathan smiled. Take your time, but Jacob already told me one thing, that he won't go to sleep unless he hears if you're coming tomorrow. Emma laughed, a small tear in her eye. Well then, I guess I'll have to say yes. Emma's world had changed in a way she never expected. Just weeks ago, she was working long hours at the diner, worried about paying bills and taking care of her sick mother. Her life was quiet, filled with struggle, but she had made peace with it. She didn't dream big. She simply wanted to do good where she could, one kind word, one warm plate of food at a time. Now she was waking up in a different rhythm. The days were still long, but the purpose behind them had grown. After saying yes to Nathan's offer, Emma began training at the new shelter. It was located just a few blocks away from the diner in a large brick building that had once been a warehouse. Now it was being transformed into something beautiful, a safe space for children who had nowhere else to go. Every morning, she walked past her old diner, sometimes stopping by for a cup of coffee or to greet the staff who had become like family. She still remembered the way that little bell above the diner door rang whenever Jacob walked in. Now, she heard new bells, children laughing, doors opening, footsteps of young lives finding a new beginning. Jacob was doing better than anyone had expected. He was still quiet and cautious at times, but his eyes were brighter. He started going to school with a private tutor and even helped around the shelter. He often spent time with Emma, telling her stories from his imagination. He loved drawing, and Emma kept a folder of all his sketches, many of which were pictures of the diner, of her, or of a big teddy bear that now lived in his room. One afternoon, as they sat together in the shelter's art room, Jacob looked at Emma and said something that made her heart pause. You know, he said while coloring a picture of the diner, you're the first person who ever made me feel seen. Emma smiled, though her eyes stung with tears. You've always been worth seeing, Jacob. You just needed someone to remind you. Nathan visited the shelter often. Though he had many businesses and people waiting for his time, he never missed a weekly check-in. He treated the place like it truly mattered, not just a project, but a mission. And he trusted Emma fully. She was the soul of the place. One day, after a long planning meeting, Nathan invited Emma for coffee in his office. His office inside the shelter was simple, nothing like the one in his skyscraper downtown. Just a desk, 2 chairs, a few photos, and a bookshelf. He always said he didn't want the kids to feel like they were being watched from some high tower. He wanted to be with them. I wanted to share something with you, Nathan said as he poured coffee for both of them. There's something about your kindness that keeps me thinking. Emma tilted her head, curious. I've met hundreds of people with good intentions, he continued. But what you did for Jacob, you did it without knowing who he was. No cameras, no applause, just quiet kindness. Emma chuckled softly. I didn't think it was a big deal. That's what makes it a big deal, Nathan said. You didn't expect anything. You opened a folder and handed her a paper. What's this? She asked. It's a proposal. I want you to lead a bigger project, and not just this shelter, but 3 more we plan to open next year. Emma blinked. Me.
Oh.
With guidance, of course. But yes, I believe in your heart, and so does Jacob. Emma looked down at the paper. Her name was written at the top in bold letters, Emma Carter, Program Director, Children's Hope Project. She touched the paper with trembling fingers. I never imagined something like this. Neither did I, Nathan admitted. But sometimes life surprises us. Double quotes. Emma thought about it for days. She spoke to her mother, who had been recovering well lately, thanks to better care. Her mother, proud and tearful, told her to follow her heart. You helped that boy, Emma. Her mother said. Now it's time to help more. Emma accepted the role. From that day on, her life became a beautiful mix of chaos and purpose. She met new children with different stories, some who had been abandoned, some who had run away from danger, and some who had simply gotten lost in a world that often ignored the weak. She listened to every child, remembered every name, and treated every one of them like they mattered, 'cause they did. Jacob became her shadow. He walked beside her during tours of the shelter, helped her organize art events, and sometimes sat quietly in her office reading books. His favorite was The Little Prince, he once said. It's about someone who sees things with their heart, like you. Emma didn't know how to respond to that, so she just hugged him. One snowy evening, something unexpected happened. Jacob had been playing with a few kids in the common room when a woman walked into the shelter. She looked tired and nervous, holding a small bag and a child by the hand. The boy looked no older than 6. He had messy hair and thin arms. Emma approached them gently. "Hi there, I'm Emma. Can I help you?" The woman's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know where else to go. We've been sleeping in the train station. My husband... He was hurting us." Emma nodded, her heart aching. "You came too. The right place." She called a staff member to prepare a room, then knelt in front of the little boy. "Hi, sweetheart. What's your name?" "Eli," he whispered. Emma smiled. "Welcome, Eli. You're safe now." Later that night, Emma sat alone in her office, looking out the window as snow gently fell. The world outside was cold and harsh, but inside the shelter, warmth was growing. She thought back to the first time she met Jacob, a hungry, scared little boy staring at pies through a diner window. And now here he was, safe and growing because of one small moment of kindness. That same week, Nathan invited Emma to a formal event, an annual charity gala where many wealthy people gathered to discuss donations and projects. Emma didn't feel comfortable in big crowds, and the idea of wearing a fancy dress and heels made her nervous. But Jacob was excited. "You'll look like a queen," he said. Drawing a picture of her in a shiny gown with a crown, Emma laughed. "I don't think I'm queen material." "You're more than that," Jacob replied. With Nathan's help, she picked a simple but beautiful dress. At the gala, she felt like a fish out of water, but she smiled and spoke kindly, just like she always did. When it was her turn to speak on stage, she told her story. Not about achievements, not about numbers. She spoke about Jacob, about the diner, about a small act of kindness that became something bigger. The room was quiet as she spoke, and when she finished, the applause was loud and sincere. After the event, a woman approached her wiping tears from her eyes. "I used to think helping others was about writing checks," the woman said. "But you made me realize it's about seeing people, really seeing them." Emma smiled. That's where kindness begins. More support came after that: donations, volunteers, interest in opening shelters in other cities. Emma became the heart of the project. A face people trusted not because she was famous or rich, but because she was real. But she never let it change her. She still visited the diner on Sundays, still helped in the kitchen, still sat with Jacob for story time. Her life was bigger now, but her heart stayed the same. One evening, after a long day, Emma sat beside Jacob in the shelter garden. The stars were bright above, and the world felt quiet. "Do you ever miss the diner?" Jacob asked. "Sometimes," Emma replied. "It was where everything started, where I found you." Jacob smiled. "You didn't find me, I think. We found each other." Emma looked at him, this boy who had once been so lost. Now he was blooming, brave, kind, strong. "I think you're right," she said softly. He leaned his head against her shoulder. "I'm glad you gave me that grilled cheese." It laughed. "Me too, Jacob, me too." In that moment, under the stars in a garden filled with hope, Emma knew that no matter where life took her, one thing would never change. She would always choose kindness, because it wasn't about big gestures or rewards. It was about moments quiet, honest moments that lit up the dark, and it all started with a plate of food, a smile, and a little boy who just needed someone to care. The story was reaching its most important moment, one where everything Emma, Jacob, Nathan, and the shelter stood for would come to light. It was a moment filled with hope, challenge, and the power of kindness that had grown from the smallest. Emma had been working tirelessly for months now. The shelter had expanded, new children were arriving, and the staff was growing. She had become a leader, but she never lost the humble heart that had started it all. Every day she made time. For Jacob, who was no longer the scared boy who once sat silently in the diner, he was growing stronger, finding his voice, and beginning to dream. One morning, as the sun poured golden light through the windows, Emma noticed Jacob standing near the entrance, looking nervous but determined. He had his school bag slung over one shoulder and a small stack of papers in his hand. "Good morning." Emma greeted him, smiling warmly. "Good morning, Emma," he said, taking a deep breath. "I have something to show you." Curious, Emma followed him to the common room where a few of the children were drawing and playing. Jacob cleared his throat and placed the papers on the table. "These are drawings and stories," he said. Softly, "I made them for the shelter. For the kids. I want to share our stories so others can understand what we've been through." Emma looked through the papers. They were full of colorful drawings, pictures of children holding hands, warm houses, and bright suns. There were also written stories in Jacob's handwriting, simple but full of feeling. They told of loneliness, fear, hope, and friendship. "This is amazing, Jacob," Emma said, tears welling in her eyes. "These stories can help people see what it's like to be us." Jacob nodded. "I want to help more kids like me. Maybe these can be in a book or a show." Emma smiled. "I think that's a wonderful idea." As the days passed, Emma and Nathan worked together to plan a big event, the shelter's first anniversary celebration. They wanted to invite the community, local leaders, and potential donors. The goal was to raise awareness and funds, also to give the children a day to shine and feel proud. Emma spent nights organizing, calling volunteers, and preparing speeches. Jacob was busy rehearsing a small play he had written based on the children's stories. When the day finally arrived, the shelter was filled with laughter and color. Balloons decorated the halls, music played softly, and tables were set with food and crafts. Children performed songs and dances, showing their talents and courage. Nathan stood beside Emma as they watched the crowd. He leaned over and said, "Look at what you've built, Emma. It's more than just a shelter. It's a family." Emma's eyes sparkled. "It's because of the kids. They gave us all a reason to try harder." Then it was time for Jacob's play. The room quieted as the children took their places on a small stage. The story was simple but powerful. It told the journey of a lost boy finding kindness, safety, and hope through strangers who became family. When the final scene ended, the audience burst into applause. Emma felt tears running down her cheeks, not just for Jacob, but for every child in the room who had fought to survive. After the event, many people approached Emma, eager to support the shelter. Donations poured in, along with offers of volunteer work and partnerships. The community was awakening to the reality of homelessness and the power of kindness. One man, an experienced social worker, came up to Emma. "Your work here is inspiring. I want to help start programs in other cities." Emma smiled. "That's exactly what we hope for. Together, we can make a difference." But even with the success, Emma knew there were still challenges. Some nights, when the shelter was quiet, she would sit alone and think about the children who hadn't found their way yet, those still out on the streets, scared and hungry. One such night, Jacob came into her office, holding a small envelope. He looked serious but hopeful. "I found this outside," he said, handing it to her. Emma opened it carefully. Inside was a letter from a boy named Michael, who had heard about the shelter but was too afraid to come in. He wrote about his fears, his dreams, and a wish for someone to believe in him. Emma read the letter slowly, her heart aching. "We have to find Michael," she said softly. Jacob nodded. "Give him hope." The next day, Emma and a small team went to search for Michael. They visited parks, underpasses, and alleyways, places where homeless children often stayed. It was difficult work, filled with silence and shadows. Finally, after hours of searching, they found him, a skinny boy no older than 10. Sitting on a bench with a worn-out jacket, Emma approached gently. "Hi, Michael. I'm Emma. This is Jacob. We want to help you." Michael looked up, eyes wide and suspicious. But when he saw Jacob, who smiled warmly, he took a small step forward. Slowly, Michael agreed to come to the shelter. Over the next weeks, Michael blossomed. He joined the other kids in classes and activities, and even helped with the garden. His smile grew wider every day. Emma felt a deep satisfaction. This was why she did what she did, to change lives one child at a time. But the biggest surprise was yet to come. One afternoon, Nathan called Emma to his office. His face was serious. "We have a visitor," he said. Emma followed him to the entrance. There stood a woman in her late 20s, nervous but determined. She held a small child's hand. "It's Lena," Nathan whispered. "Jacob's mother." Emma's heart skipped a beat. This was the woman Jacob had lost so many years ago, the mother he had never forgotten. Lena looked at Jacob with tears streaming down her face. "I've been searching for you," she said. "I'm so sorry for everything." Jacob stood frozen, staring at her. After a long moment, he stepped forward and hugged her tightly. Emma watched. Overwhelmed by the power of healing, Lena explained how she had been trapped in a dangerous situation, unable to find a way back to her son. But now, she wanted to make up for lost time and be part of his life. Jacob looked at Emma and Nathan, then back at his mother. "I want to try," said quietly. The days that followed were full of emotion, meetings, conversations, tears, and laughter. Lena began rebuilding her relationship with Jacob, supported by Emma and Nathan. It wasn't easy. Trust had to be earned, and old wounds healed slowly. But with time, Jacob learned that family wasn't just about blood. It was about love, support, and forgiveness. Emma felt grateful to witness this journey. She thought about how one small act, feeding a hungry boy for free, had set all this in motion. Years later, Emma stood at the opening of a new shelter in another city. Jacob was beside her, no longer the scared boy, but a confident young man ready to give back. Nathan smiled proudly. The crowd applauded as Emma spoke, her voice steady and full of hope. "We all have the power to change a life," she said. "Sometimes it begins with kindness and the courage to believe in someone." As the sun set, Emma looked at Jacob and whispered, "Thank you for trusting me." Jacob smiled. "Thank you for saving me." Their story was a reminder that no matter how small, the gesture, kindness, could light up the darkest place and change the world one heart at a time.